All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful afternoon for the GSWS Career Talk. You might be joining us live on Zoom right now, or you might be watching this afterwards on recording. Either way, we very much wanted to welcome you. To start things off, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that SFU is on the unceded and stolen traditional territories of the traditional Coast Salish lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Katzie, Coquitlam, Kikite, Kwanlin, Semiahmoo, and Tawasan peoples on those traditional territories. Our three campuses reside. Currently, right now, I'm on the mountain that settlers have referred to, Burnaby Mountain. I'm right there. And I very much, as an educator, I very much acknowledge that there are a lot of concepts and principles that are, especially in relation to career development, that are deeply colonial. So as a career educator, I definitely have critical reflections over it. Also, at the same time, encourage us to challenge some of those thoughts that are deeply rooted in colonial ideas, and such as capitalism, neoliberalism. And hopefully in this conversation, and many other conversations, not just about career, but in our work, we can continue to decolonize the places where we have impact. So I'd like to invite everyone to reflect on your relationship with the land. And just a quick introduction. I'm your host this afternoon. My name is Albert. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm the career education manager at Career and Volunteer Services. But I am not just by myself. I'm joined by my wonderful colleagues. In fact, the whole planning team is here. So perhaps would you two be okay to unmute and introduce yourself quickly? So.
Hi, my name is Roberta Nielsen. I am the Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies Manager and Undergrad Advisor, so I may have known some of you or at least emailed you. So nice to see you all today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Casey McCarthy, and I am the Communications and Events Coordinator with GSWS. And I also work with Indigenous Studies, so some of you might have heard from me there as well. So great to
Yeah.
be here today.
Thank you again, Casey and Roberta. And I know that this is kind of part of the formality, but this is the GSWS workshop. So I would imagine many of you already know Roberta and have heard from Casey from the emails and communication. So good to have you all here with us. So just a quick little introduction of what's about to happen in the next hour plus. Um, you know, I wanted to highlight a few things in terms of really supporting folks within GSWS on how do we go about and discover our career options. Clearly, I will not be providing answers or solutions, but where I'll be coming from is to share resources, ideas, strategies, because I want to acknowledge that even though we could be in the same department, we could be in the same undergraduate program, your background, your uniqueness, or even your degree and the courses that you have taken will be different than the person next to you or other folks in the room. So I want to make sure that I want to acknowledge the uniqueness of each of our situation and providing you with the tools and ideas so that you can go about in doing the research for your possibilities that are open to you and available to you. And the best part, which I'm looking forward, the workshop is the Ask Us Anything about careers. So myself and Roberta will be on the panel to answer any of your questions, and I'll talk a little bit about how you can post your question so that we can answer that as they come up. And before we wrap up and call it a day, I will also highlight a few career resources that are GSWS related, but are also available within SFU. I will highlight a little bit of that. And again, all the slides will be available to you shortly after the presentation. So don't feel like you have to take all the don't feel like you have to take notes or record all the links that I'll be showing you in this presentation. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about how we're going to interact. So let me introduce you to this platform called Slido. So this is a Slido that allows folks to be completely anonymous. So you do not have to create any account. You just need a device to scan the QR code. It could be your phone, it could be another, or if you're watching this on your phone, you can actually use your laptop. So you can go to slido.com, put in the hashtag GSWS career, or you can just scan the QR code and it will lead you directly to the page. And what I want to show you is, first of all, it's the Q&A page. So I just kind of put in a sample question. This is not actual question, but I want to show you what it looks like, because if once you log in or once you scan the QR code, you'll be led to this page where if you don't see the Q&A tab right away, look for the Q&A tab and click on it. What's really cool about this platform is, number one, you can post your questions anonymously. At the same time, if you see other questions that folks have posted and you're like, well, I want to add to that. I know some of you have already done that, is to click on that thumbs up so that the questions can be upvoted. So how Roberta and I will be approaching those questions is we'll be starting from those who have the most votes, and then we'll kind of work our way down. So this would be a good way to cover the questions that more folks would like us to respond to. So, and again, it's very, it is a platform that allows you to post questions anonymously, but if you wanted to mention your name, that's also okay too. It's a relatively small group, but keep in mind that, anything that is on the share screen will be recorded. So I just want to keep you, less folks in mind. Yeah, lovely, lovely. So yeah, start posting the questions as we go. And when we get to the Ask Us Anything portion, we will address those one after the other. So, and I promise I will have a chance to be interactive. So let's start with a quick poll. I know we are a relatively small group, but I still want to get a sense of where are you at, with your career situation. And I know these are somewhat kind of random, responses, but I want to get a sense of, for some of you, maybe you're in the process of seeking and you're kind of open-minded. But maybe for some folks, it's like, well, I don't even know where to go. I haven't even started looking at it. But maybe for some of you, you have a few options in mind and, are still sort of pondering between the two, or a few of them. Or maybe for some of us, it's, oh yeah, I know exactly what I want to do. I have one very clear direction. I know that, you might actually find yourself in more than one of these contexts, but feel free to pick one, so that we can get a sense of, where you're at. So, and as you can tell, this is a live poll. So as folks answer the questions, you can see the answers are adjusting. So far, for everyone who have answered, half of us are seeking an open-minded. That's great. Which exactly, hopefully what this workshop would be helpful for. And also for folks who have few options in mind, right? And, and again, regardless of what situations you are at, my hope is that from this workshop, it can add resources and thoughts and ideas and and strategies for you to not only expand those options, but how to know more information about what those options are about. So great. Thank you for all of you who responded. And again, feel free to keep that Slido browser window open. So throughout the workshop, we're going to keep going back to have polls like that so that folks we can hear from you, and you can always keep posting questions in the Q&A for our Ask Us Anything later. All right. So, what are my career options? So over the years, I have the privilege to listen to a lot of stories, or talk to a lot of students and listen to their stories. And many of them are either doing GSWS as a major or as a minor. And this is one of the top questions, like, what are my career options, right? And this might even come up as, well, what are some jobs that I can do with this degree? And I wanted to start this section in terms of sharing resources by highlighting a couple of mindsets. So how do folks talk about how do we sort of go about it, identifying those possibilities, right? So forgive me for being a little bit overgeneralized, but allow me to sort of paint the picture and kind of set a little bit of the framework. So on one hand of the process, there is you, right? And there's me, the person. And perhaps the questions we want to ask ourselves is, what kind of experience do I have? And what is this education has equipped me in terms of skills and experience and knowledge? What are things that are important to me, right? And I know that for a lot of folks who are in GSWS, there are principles and there are values, that are clearly near and dear to their heart. So these are the things that you probably have been thinking about. But it's also about how you want to work, where you want to work, who do you want to work with, right? So all of these things that are about being aware of who you are as a person and what you want to do in life. And that's only part of that equation. And the other part of the picture is kind of like the world or the community around you, right? What are the roles that are available? Well, what do they look like? What are the requirements? What are the responsibility? What are the organizations that are doing work that is really near and dear to my heart, right? So the other part of this thinking or this research is learning more about what's out there. And ultimately, what we're looking for is that where is the alignment, right? Between you, the work that you want to do, the people that you want to work with, the skills that you have, and being able to align with roles in particular organizations doing work that you're good at and doing work that is dearly needed in the community. So again, allow me to kind of, paint that because the research is not just about knowing what are the roles and occupations out there, but it's also a process of self-awareness. And again, even though as I'm, painting it as if this is a linear process, but think of this more of an iterative process where you continue to discover who you are as a person and what's important to you. But at the same time, you're also learning about options and possibilities that exist in different organizations, different sectors that are available. So in very many ways, this is an iterative process. To sort of take that one step further, allow me to highlight two mindsets that is important when we are engaging in this process of exploring our careers. The first one I want to share is your GSWS degree, again, whether you're a major or minor, opens you to way more career options than the one typically associated with your major, right? Because again, it almost seems like sometimes, especially at a post-secondary institution, it almost feels like there is a database or a table or document hidden somewhere that has written all the jobs that one can do with one particular degree. But essentially, or I guess, but more realistically, is that the skills that you have developed and the experience that you have that's allowed you to do all the jobs that are commonly associated, but your options are definitely not limited by your major, right? And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. So keep that in mind. And the second thing is, so what does that mean if I have more options than, beyond what my major are typically associated? It's because what's available to you also depending on other aspects of your life, right? Think about you might have other jobs outside of the university. You might volunteer. You might have different hobbies. You might have different interests. You might have lots of life experience. Again, when I speak to a lot of students, just where they, what their upbringing, what, they might be coming from another country and the things that they've experienced in life really drive them to, or really motivate them to do a certain type of work or support a certain type of population. And that has a huge impact on the career journey that they wanted to be in. So definitely your degree is one piece of the puzzle, but by no means is the only piece of the puzzle. And keep in mind, the flip side of that picture is also important. So when an employer assessing or evaluating a candidate for a particular role or for a particular job, obviously education will be part of that consideration, but needless to say, an employer will also look at what other work experience does this person have, what volunteering have they done, what other skills, and why are they interested in working with this organization or with this population, so on and so forth. That it is important that we see ourselves as a holistic human being, not just our degree or not just the skills that we know, but everything that kind of comes together. And once we kind of acknowledge that, all of a sudden our perspective is widened a little bit, and hopefully that would bring more possibilities into the picture or on your radar. So Speaking of jobs on your radar, right? Again, I know we have a relatively small group, so I'd love to get to know more about what's on your mind. So, and again, earlier a couple minutes ago, we had the poll about whether you're thinking a few options or you're seeking. So I would love to know sort of like what sort of job titles or what types of jobs are currently on your radar. For some folks, it could be very specific. I want to do this in this organization, like that will be awesome. But at the same time, you might be like, oh, I'm really curious about doing work, to support, folks who are fleeing from a political unstable situation, right? So, but I don't necessarily know what those jobs are, but that's the type of work, or I really want to advocate for for gender equity, right? So those are the things that, feel free to put it in. So I just, I would love to kind of get a sense of what is currently on your radar so that, as we go, some of those examples or some of those resources, I can kind of keep that in mind, and also, yeah, just be aware. So yeah, so feel free. I know that there are a couple of people are still typing, so take your time. I know that, uh, and this is a word cloud. So as you can see, there are certain words that become bigger. It's because when the same words are being used by more than one person, the word gets bigger. So it's not necessarily that word is more important than other words, but it's just sort of like a little bit of a vote. And I know that in this situation, you might be putting in a phrase, but the system kind of parse it out, in terms of the individual word. So I haven't thought about that. So some words comes out, it makes a lot of sense. For example, gender affirming care accessibility, right? But I know that there might be words that you meant it to be a phrase, but it just got cut off. So forgive the platform for not being as smart as we want it to be. So, and that's great. So, a lot of really amazing words. It's really interesting that people is in the middle of that, especially all the work that you do are towards supporting people of different background, different intersectionality. I see advocacy, legal, health, transgender, so folks from different background, young, queer, a lot of descriptors. I want to be educator. That's really, really amazing, right? And I wanted to, I just want to say a big appreciation of some of these words because sometimes we might not know exactly what each organization are going to refer to, like exactly specifically what work title or job title, what it's called. And it's absolutely fine to start with thinking, this is the work that I want to do, because again, sometimes a job title doesn't speak the whole picture or doesn't, or you cannot understand the full extent of the responsibility or all the cool things that you get to do in that role just by looking at the job title. So forgive me for pointing out the obvious, but it's absolutely great to think about, okay, what does it mean to be involved in the work of supporting folks to increase gender affirming care accessibility, right? Who does that work? What does that role look like? Is it a public relations role or is it an advocacy role? Or can it be both? Or is it an educator role, right? So all of these things that we have all shared is very rich, and again, I appreciate that because even though for many of us at this stage things may look a little fuzzy, like or you might not even know which organization or what roles will do that, but having the sense of direction, having the sense of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I can be involved with inclusive policy making, right? So I think that's a really, really good start to this discussion and to this thinking. So excellent. Really appreciate for everyone who put in their thoughts, and this is a really, really cool word cloud that we have created together. So we've talked a little bit about mindsets and sort of framework, and now I wanted to be more specific about, okay, what are some specific tools and specific resources that can help you to gain a little bit more clarity on things or on roles and things that you're fascinated about. So I will be highlighting I want to highlight 5 tools that allows us to do that. And again, I will be going through this one by one, and I will be including the links on the slide so that when you get the slide, you'll be able to click on that right away. So let's get right to it. So tool number one is this tool called What Can I Do with a Degree In? And this is a tool that is created by, by SFU and on my team specifically, Korean Volunteer Services. And how it works is that we have organized this information under by faculty and also by department. So let me just switch my screen to show you what that looked like. So obviously, GSWS has a page, and this is a great resource to start because if this process or if this process of exploring your career possibilities feels like a lot of work for you, this is actually a good place to start because, you could spend a couple minutes and get some ideas. So what we did is that a couple of years ago, we went to LinkedIn and look at all the folks who are, who either have done a major or minor within GSWS and kind of look at their LinkedIn profile and say, well, what are they ended up doing? So by no means this is an extensive research where, 16% of folks becoming a social policy researcher, 5% will, become victims advocate. These are just examples, right? But what students have find it helpful in the past is that, wow, like these are all alumni who are doing a variety of work that have gone on to do these really cool work after they've done the degree with GSWS, right? So having said that, like I was saying early, your options are not limited by your major. There's so many more. So if you look at these titles, there's a story behind each person, and we don't know what other things that they've done beyond their degree. So, but this is just to give you some examples. And we organize these job titles into three categories. Let me just make it a little bit bigger, just in case if it's hard to read. The first column is jobs that are related to folks' major. And this one is sort of job titles that are beyond the typical option, right? But we also have one column that require further education. So sometimes it's an extra certificate, sometimes it's a graduate degree. So again, this is just kind of giving you some ideas to think, to add to what's already on your radar, knowing that there are many, many different possibilities going forward. So that's tool number one. Second tool that I want to share with you is called career cruising. So this is a tool that, let me just go back a little bit. So this is a tool that that SFU has purchased for all students, undergraduate and graduate students. And in the slides, I'll be including the password and username that you can access. But let me show you what it can do. So career cruising essentially is a database of career profiles. And unlike the reality where there are upwards of 30,000 different job titles, this has about, a couple hundred, right? But this is a really good as a way to start. So let's say, for example, some of us thought about, being, a social worker, right? Putting in, or maybe, in advocacy. So one of the things that you can look for is putting in a title that you're familiar with and see what profile comes up. Like, again, some of these could be fairly general, like even if you look at activists or people involved in advocacy, we're talking about multiple different issues or not just a specific kind of issues. So these are still very general and included probably multiple hundreds, if not thousands of different job titles. But what is really useful is that, it gives you a little bit of a background and general description. But what folks might find interesting and helpful is this related career section. So what is really cool about that, again, let me make this a little bit bigger, is that this website or this database connected careers or job titles that are similar but different. So if you think about being an activist, lobbyist, fundraiser, community worker, public policy analyst. So some might be already on your radar, but you're like, oh, I wonder what it is like to be a community worker, right? So that allows you to sort of look at another career profile and kind of consider that. And you can also still look at the related careers of community worker. So as you can see, social worker comes up, but the list seems very different than the ones that we found on social worker, right? So again, this is just a way for you to sort of, kind of like when you Google, sort of one link leads to another, leads to another. So it kind of give you a chance to bounce around a few ideas and have a few more things that add to what you're already thinking that could be related or relevant, right? Because sometimes, in the actual workplaces, sometimes there are overlap with those roles. Like folks who are, especially working in community engagement, they might do a little bit of advocacy. They might also be the frontline support for their clients. So sometimes you will see a lot of overlaps as well. So far, so good. So far we've covered two. So the second tool is career cruising. So you'll see this slide and the link will be there along with the password and username. So let's talk about the third tool, which is actually just job posting site. I know this one may sound too obvious, but what we often use a job posting site is to use it for looking for jobs that we can apply for now. But what is actually really useful at the same time is looking at ways of discovering jobs or work titles that are relevant, right? So again, for this demo, I'm using Indeed, but it could be any other type of job posting sites that you use, LinkedIn Jobs, Google Jobs. But let's say, some folks mentioned about equity, right? So let's put in equity. And obviously we could be more specific, but let's be general right now. And you might notice that the geographical location that I'm included is everywhere in Canada. This is not to say that, oh, let's go find a job in Saskatchewan or Ontario, but this is just to give you an idea of what type of jobs exist, right? Again, allow me to point out the obvious. Being a job posting site, these are the jobs that are currently vacant, right? Which means that what we see is really the tip of the iceberg of a lot more jobs available, right? But if you think about what we see earlier in career cruising, which are sort of general occupational profiles, these are actual jobs and what they look like in the community, right? So, so let's take a look. So sometimes depending on which keyword you use, like this, probably we need to be more specific. So right now, 9,000, definitely not asking anybody to look at all 9,000 at the same time. But since we were looking at community, worker or community outreach, so let's take a look at that. So use community outreach instead. So this is definitely more manageable. So, but what you will find is is that there are a variety of different work and again, because these search engines are very keyword driven, sometimes having the right combination of keywords or trying different kinds of keywords also help. So what is really interesting is that as you are going through some of these job postings. So for example, this one right in Vancouver, you get a chance to see, okay, what is the organization about? What is the position about? But more importantly, what are the requirements, right? I know, allow me to just go on a tangent for a little bit, right? As you can see a lot, it's not uncommon for you to see within a job posting that a bachelor's degree, is a requirement, but they're not specifically asking for a bachelor's degree in GSWS, in sociology, in psychology, right? It's bachelor's degree in business administration or social services or other relevant field, right? So this just go on to say that the idea that somebody somebody is just looking at your education, I think, like I said, going back to the idea that, as a candidate, you're being considered holistically. So I just want to highlight that again. And again, you will be able to see the requirements that are needed, but also, sorry, I'm referring to not just requirement, but also responsibilities and things like that. So that's a really cool so that's some really cool information, right? But also keep in mind, right? As you're browsing through these job postings, you're also learning about organizations who have these roles. So let's say, for example, you come across a role that, it's not exactly a fit, but the work that this organization is doing seems to be really interesting, right? I'm going to take another example, Luma Native Housing Society. Like, what is this about, right? So you can actually, now that you have have an organization name in mind, you can either Google that or you can just click on that if you're on Indeed to see what other jobs are available, right? So there's so many ways to use job posting site to sort of branch off to learn a little bit more about the different type of job postings and different types of organizations. And again, not to mention that you'll actually get some pretty, hopefully some concrete idea of, how much, what's the salary, because working and living in Vancouver is very expensive. So some of that, getting a sense of that is very important. So I just want to highlight that, and that's tool number 3. And let me just go back to my slides here. So just want to highlight a few things that I've already done. Definitely look at qualifications, responsibilities, organizations, but also keep in mind that maybe there's a role that you come across and it's like, wow, like this takes like 3 to 5 years of experience. Like, how am I ever going to get that, right? But keep in mind that every one of these roles, they don't work completely independently with nobody, which means that there are other people on their team or working in that organization or working in that department that also have roles. So can you imagine, let's say, for example, a role that takes 3 to 5 years of experience, what would be the roles before that? What are the roles that people have as they move into this bigger role? So I just want to kind of highlight that's the thing about that as well. But more importantly, the type of jargon, right? Like, again, this gives you a sense of learning about sort of the language or the words that different organization or different sectors might use to describe, different roles. So you can also get to learn more about that when you review the job postings. So moving right along, I've got 2 more tool that I want to share with you. This one is one of my favorite, and a lot of students find that also very helpful. It's the LinkedIn Alumni Finder. Earlier on, I talked about the "What can I do with a degree in" tool that we've compiled together. Actually, is based on information we get from LinkedIn. So allow me to quickly walk you through how that works. So, and I want to emphasize that for folks who have just started their LinkedIn profile or they've just opened an account 5 minutes ago, you can do this. So it's not something that, you have to have an account for like multiple years or over a certain number of connections. So when you log into LinkedIn, what you want to do is you want to look for Simon Fraser University. And once you get there, for this particular tool, I definitely recommend to do it on a desktop because sometimes I try it on a mobile platform and I can't seem to find the tabs. So that's just how LinkedIn does their layout. Maybe the app is even more helpful, but definitely do it on a laptop or desktop setting. So find the alumni tab. What is really interesting is right off the bat, you realize that there are 152,000, close to 152,000 alumni, right? And these are everybody who either, who are from current student to all the way people who have graduated, 65, 67 years ago since SFU started. So, but how it could be helpful for you if you're like, well, I'm in GSWS. What are other folks that have, what are the folks who have done a GSWS degree ended up doing? So you can actually use this filter function. So one caveat about this is that LinkedIn are not very good at compiling all the different departments that exist in all the Canadian universities or North American universities. So there isn't a specific filter or tag that says GSWS, but they do have, gender studies. They do have women studies. So I've been trying a multiple of different filters that add to that. So once we do that, let me just kind of show you there. You see that it kind of filter it down from a significant number down to a relatively more manageable number, which is 575, which is still a lot, right? And as you can see, a lot of folks, because I work at SFU, so you will see a lot of SFU, related folks, on this list. So, but when you do your search, it'll be a little bit different, but definitely you'll see different names. So this is sometimes I will occasionally refer it to as professional stalking, right? I mean, you are kind of looking into someone's sort of background, but these are all information that are publicly available and folks who want to do this because they wanted to connect professionally with other folks. So just to bring up a couple of examples, as I was doing all that, search earlier, again, this filter or this search is not perfect. So sometimes you might come across different folks and they mention particular words that this search pick up, but the person isn't really, may not have actually done a GSWS major or minor. But in the process of doing this, I found a few folks. So let me share that, a couple with you as an example. So, I know Erica personally, so I'm going to bring them up. And I crossed paths with Erica a number of years ago, and I can assure you that Erica graduated with a joint major, in poli-sci and GSWS. And you can kind of get a sense of their journey, right? Like currently, they are a director of impact and development at a not-for-profit organization in Montreal. And before that, she worked at McGill. So what is really interesting is that obviously everyone's sort of journey and path will be different, but this gives folks a really good idea of, if I wanted to do this, down the road, what are some folks who have gone before me and what path have they taken to accumulate experience and build up their experience to eventually take on a role that I'm interested, right? So this is Erica example. And I've also seen other examples, Ashpreet. I don't know Ashpreet myself, but I noticed that, they graduated with a BA, look like a major in GSWS, and they are the administration and volunteer manager right now for Options for Sexual Health. And so again, you get to see all the different cool stuff that they have done over the years. And looks like Roberta, this person because because they're connected to you, right? So it's a really small world, especially within GSWS. So again, I just want to highlight a couple and really encourage you to dive into that, and maybe you come across this really cool role, and in this role you realize, this exists with this organization, and maybe this is the first time you've heard about the organization, and you can click on the organization and learn about what does this organization do. This seems really cool, right? So again, using LinkedIn, starting from the alumni finding tool, but kind of branch off to all kinds of information. All right, so moving right along here, and the last tool that I want to share with you is probably a little bit of a surprise, but let me just switch my slide first, is ChatGPT or any natural language AI tool. I know that talking about this in a post-secondary setting could be a little uncomfortable because I know that a lot of these tools are being referred under the context of academic integrity. But the context I want to refer here is to how do we use tools like ChatGPT or Gemini to help us brainstorm or turbocharge this process of brainstorming, right? So on that note, I just want to do a really, really quick demo to show you how this could be done in a sense that, to kind of help you brainstorm, right? So I know that earlier on, let me actually just go back to the slide earlier. Let me just see, I want to show you this. Hang on. I want to go back to this. There we go, the word cloud, right? So think about the word cloud. We'll use this as an example, right? And I wanted to bring up ChatGPT to show you how you can take some of these ideas and use ChatGPT as a way of searching. So let me just switch the share screen again. So again, you can sign up for some of these free tools. Even the free level is actually quite useful. But a couple of things that we want to keep in mind. Number one is that ChatGPT or other natural language AI tools, they give as much, they take as much as they give. So one thing I want to caution everyone is keep your personal identifiable information out of that. So I just want to make it as general as possible. No specific names, no school names, no, just kind of keep it general. And so that's number one. Number two, that I wanted to say as a disclaimer is sometimes we don't know how accurate that is, right? So always take everything with a grain of salt. But using this as a brainstorming tool, I want to say that even if it comes up with 10 things and say 8 of them are just nonsense, right? You might still find 1 or 2 things that might helpful, that might just stimulate your research or jumpstart your research. So on that note, let me show you what you can do. So you can say something like this. I am a gender, sexuality, and women's studies grad. I'm interested in, let's just pull some keywords from that word cloud. I'm interested in inclusive policy making and advocacy. And also, I also like to work with transgender people. So I know that this might not be coming from the same person, but I'm just grabbing keywords and see what you can do. So, I forgot to say one more thing. Yes, well, I think ChatGPT, yeah, exactly. So give me some ideas that are not often think of. And I think ideas, I mean career, just to be specific. Sometimes understand that. Again, for folks who've played around with these tools before, probably know that they're iterative, so it remembers things that you've said before. And one of the really powerful things about these tools are it's really good at taking a lot of information and be sort of very specific about certain things, right? So you can actually put in more parameters about what you like, what you're interested. So for example, you might want to add, equity is very important to me, and I want to do work that involves that, right? And again, spelling doesn't count, as you can tell by now. I'm terrible in typing. So yes. So So what is really interesting is just showing showing different roles or showing different titles. What is really interesting, again, if you are just in the process of starting this research, sometimes just having the words that, like, are there title called equity and inclusion coordinator or, accessibility and inclusion advisor. So sometimes just, now that you have some of these terms with you, it gives you a chance to sort of Google them, right? And you might be able to actually deep dive it, right? So let's say, this one that mentioned community, you can say, number 4 is, okay, hang on, 4, there we go, is interesting. Give me links to organizations that have this kind of work. Right. So what I wanted to encourage folks is not just using ChatGPT, to search for information, but actually specifically ask them for link to actual organizations so you can verify that information, right? Because again, accuracy sometimes is questionable. So, and we don't know. So, but again, now that, we've done it, so it allows you to say, oh, this is an interesting organization. I want to know more about folks, organization that specifically works with LGBTQ2 plus refugees and newcomers. And I can check out this website, right? And when you're on the website, you can also look at, maybe perhaps the roles that they're hiring, things that they do. So again, using ChatGPT as a way, again, to sort of speed up your research or give you some brainstorming ideas is great. I love to spend another 10, 15 minutes to research this, but again, I'd be sorry to demo this, but I think I should pause here because I still have lots of things I want to go through with you. So definitely consider using some of these natural language AI tool as part of your tools to do research. So let me go back to the PowerPoint. So hang on a second.
We have a couple questions on the Slido. I don't know if you'd like to talk to them now or later on.
Yeah, actually.
Oh,
So, why, let me just,
yeah.
yeah, I think why don't I, because I know that there is a Ask Us Anything section. So thanks for letting me know, Casey. I think I'll probably save that because in that case, we can answer them all at once, and and I also want to invite Roberta to be part of that. So why don't we do that when we, sorry, why don't we do that as we when we get there. So I think I'm couple more slides. So thanks for letting me know. Yes. So before I wrap up this section, I just want to say that doing online research is kind of just the beginning. It's also about who are the people that you can talk to, right? Again, when we're looking at the LinkedIn alumni finding tool, that would be sort of like maybe you come across in GSWS alum that are doing really, really interesting work, and now that you have a name, right? Reach out to them and say, hey, I'm currently in my fourth year. I'm really fascinated about the work you do. I found you on LinkedIn. I know that you don't. I know that you know Roberta. And hey, can I ask you a couple questions? You have 15 minutes on Zoom. I want to learn more about the organization that you're part of, right? So, and those conversations will definitely give you way more information, but more importantly, information that folks who are already in the industry or already in a particular organization can give you. And they're much more accurate or much more specific than information that you find normally online. But also, on top of talking to people, how can you get some firsthand experience, right? Either in terms of doing work that is related or being part of an organization that you really want to work with or work for down the road. How can I get some firsthand experience? Can I volunteer with them for a little bit, or maybe can I, do some contract work with other similar type of organization, right? So doing this online research is just the beginning, but definitely you wanted to take it a step further. So going back to the mindset that we talked about earlier, right? That your career options are more than those that are associated with your degree, but all aspects of your life. So this one got me thinking about sort of how do you think beyond your degree? Because it's not just everything that is related to what you're studying and what you're passionate about right now, but also your experience, because they open doors to countless career possibilities. So allow me to highlight a couple of aspects, right? The first thing I want to highlight is, the skills that you've acquired, right? So everything that you've done, whether it is your academic experience or skills that you've developed in jobs or in other things that you do, they're all part of who you are. And a lot of times these skills sort of stack up, right? Imagine Lego blocks, right? And if earlier we looked at job postings, and if you look at any job postings, you can almost see that there are 5, 8, 10, 15 different responsibilities, and they're nothing more than a combination of skills, knowledge, and also understanding or experience in how to do things. So if you think about it that way, is that even though the job that you want to apply for, you may not necessarily have done the exact thing in another organization earlier, but skills that you have developed over the years, whether through the classrooms or through the work that you've done or from volunteering that you've done, they all become part of the building blocks that you've added over the course of the years to be able to convince a potential employer that, hey, I have acquired these skills from a number of different places, and they've all added up to allow me to do this job, right? So let's just dive into that a little bit, right? One of the main thing about one of the reasons why I said, your GSWS degree takes you to a lot of different things is that the skills that you've gained from your degree is absolutely transferable, right? And the way I did this is, again, just to be totally transparent, I've asked ChatGPT to go in to look at some of the syllabus within SFU, a syllabus of the GSWS courses, and identify the skills that are coming from these courses. So the caveat is, I don't know how accurate it is. So feel free to correct me. I know that folks who are in the room are actually folks who have taken these courses. So, so do feel free to to jump in and let me know it is incorrect. But these are the things that I was asking AI to summarize with me, right? Critical thinking and analytical reading skills, right? That's, pretty obvious. Research and writing skills. You've done a lot of that, I imagine. But also the idea of being interdisciplined, or have multiple perspective in understanding certain phenomenon. But a big part of that is also how do you engage in those conversations? How do you communicate and have dialogue, on those issues and on those skills? And for many of you, right, definitely social justice, equity, and critical awareness. Like again, in a lot of those work, even though even though you might not necessarily be the person to be to in a full-time advocacy role, right? But in perhaps in a lot of supporting roles, those are also involved with that. Quantitative and data literacy and, media literacy and argumentation, right? So these are all the things that, think about the courses that you've taken. How have they equipped you to, and how do these skills are transferable to a number of different roles beyond the obvious? The second thing I want to highlight is the idea that all the experience counts, right? So it's not really just, again, your education and your degree is absolutely a big part of that. But also think about things that you do outside of your degree, right? So I imagine many of us have to do survival jobs to support ourselves, right? Again, whether, how much you consider this as quote and unquote unrelated to the work that you want to do down the road, it is still building and developing you with a lot of different skills that allows you to carry over to jobs and careers that you wanted to do. Perhaps you have done a lot of on-campus involvement, like volunteering or maybe, working at a particular lab as a research assistant. There's also community volunteering, right? You probably be doing some really interesting work. But also think about some of the really amazing academic projects and papers that you've done, right? And again, I don't want to emphasize that, oh yeah, just because, it doesn't have to be the ones that you've gotten an A or A plus. It could have been just a topic that are really near and dear to your heart. And in that process, you've learned a lot. And the paper that you've put together really kind of sums up, the knowledge that you know about a particular area or about a particular people's group. So that's also important, right? Not to mention about your life experience, but also maybe other self-initiated projects as well. Maybe it's a project that you've started, to support a particular organization, right? Like, so all of these experience counts. So on that note, I also, I wanted to do a little bit of a group think, right? Because again, it's so much easier, so often, I should say, as I'm listening to students sort of talking about the background and the stories, it's so often that we ourselves are the one who sort of filter out, oh, this doesn't count, or that is not related, or this has nothing to do with that. So I really wanted us to sort of think about, okay, what experience do you already have that might seemingly on the surface could be irrelevant to the work that you want to do, or maybe, but the more that you think about it, it's actually related, right? So I just want to kind of get a sense, from the room in terms of what experience do you already have that you wanted to use that as a way of thinking about or brainstorming possibilities that you can do with your education, but also your experience down the road. So again, this poll is active. So feel free, if you still have that browser page open, go there. But if it's accidentally closed, you can scan this QR code or go to slido.com, put in the hashtag GSWS career. Yeah, so excellent. Thank you. Yeah, lived experience being queer and gender diverse, right? Like again, I can't say enough about your lived experience. It's a big part, right? Again, in this just short phrase, it says a lot of, perhaps about the career possibilities that you're thinking about because of your lived experience and, folks that you have engaged with who share similar experience, right? Experience as a person of color, absolutely. And again, I also want, let me just go back to this list again. So think about your life experience, definitely think about any academic projects or papers that you've done. Think about community involvement, or things that you've done within SMU. You might have been involved with a student union, you might have been a mentor, but also again, think about all the things that is so easily cast aside. Like, oh, this is not related, this is not relevant, right? Feel free to put that in as well. So I want to bring that list as well. So
Yeah.
if you think of more, again, this is completely anonymous. You don't feel like you have to put in all the details, but feel free to add to this list as well, so that we can explore from different aspects and add to just more than just your education or just your degree. It also gives me a chance to get a sip of tea.
Yeah. I re
So
I
go
remember
ahead, Casey.
when we were hiring, when I was hiring at my previous job, we were very impressed by someone who worked at the PNE managing a food service um, table and how she actually managed to transfer that to managing events. So sometimes those
Yeah.
experiences are very transferable when you just think that doesn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, Casey, that's an awesome example. And I'd love to hear more
Mhm.
about that, right? Because again, if you sort of look at just on the surface, right? Like working at quote unquote a survival job or a hospitality job,
Mhm.
doesn't seem to be really that related to, because you're mentioning about event planning, right? So what do you see as an employer or as somebody who are on the hiring panel? Like what skills or what experience do you see from just, yeah, just have for somebody who had experience working at PNE, right?
Yeah, she could manage a crowd, and she was transferring that to managing a whole bunch of little kids who were doing a dance recital at an arts center. So if you can manage a bunch of hungry people at the PNE who have been standing in the sun in the line, you can probably manage, making sure a dance recital goes on time and that people who are in a bad mood will get through and managing the chaos.
I was also going to add too, like with these job descriptions, in some ways they're also wish lists. Like as a person who's hired people, you put this up, but you don't always get somebody who can tick off all those boxes. So, I mean, maybe not the president of the company job, but definitely other jobs that it's worth putting your hat in the ring to see. Even it just gives you the experience of, okay, trying to apply, writing that cover letter, working out how does my peony experience relate to this job? Stuff like that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And really appreciate that about that point, Roberta, because again, right, some really smart employers, kind of like how Casey has illustrated, like they are wise enough to look beyond and see the transferable skills, but sometimes employers might not, right? So it becomes sort of our job is to say, yeah, like, this experience working at PNE allows me to, like, if I can manage a bunch of hungry people, I can manage this event. So this is something that we all have to see it in ourselves first before we're able to articulate and convince that with a potential employer, right? So again, don't take it for granted that everybody will be as wise as Casey or other smart employers who can see that. You have to do that yourself. So that's why I want to emphasize that, hey, like again, experience with different clients, working with publishing to fitness app. Like, so I think again, you might not be working with a different clientele, but your experience working with a diverse population definitely transfer from one sector to another, right? So I really appreciate, the story and also what folks have added in the poll. So I know this is a perfect segue to my favorite part, which is the Q&A. So I know that Roberta and Casey has already jumped in, so we can dive right into that. I think in the next 15, 20 minutes or so, we're going to answer questions you have. And there are two really good questions there already. And I think this is a fairly informal approach, meaning that, like, again, as Roberta and me and Casey, if you have any thoughts, please jump in, and anyone as well. Like, I think it's a small enough group, but again, keep in mind that, the recording will pick up, if you speak out. This is not to discourage you, but I just wanted to, everyone to be aware of that. So, and again, you can upvote questions. You can also add question as we go. So I just wanted to make sure that so there are three questions, and let's jump right into it. First question, would love to hear about what sort of careers your graduates pursue. Yeah, so I've kind of highlighted some of that resource already, but Roberta, like I know you
Yep.
have known so many alumni over the years. I love to hear your insight as well. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. We definitely have had people go into law, the legal advocate kind of, either they go on to do law school. There's definitely that pool. There's definitely folks who have gone into counseling, and even just like I'll call it small C counseling. Like I don't have I'm not a psychiatrist, but they're doing counseling, whether it's in nonprofits or and that's definitely leads into the helping victims, helping advocate for immigrants. Like we had a student who worked for Mosaic and worked with immigrants who were LGBT, making the transition to living in Canada kind of thing. So it's definitely, we've had lots of people go into education, teachers at different levels, library sciences. We've had a lot of students go into that. Social media, content manager. So that thing about the apps, I was like, yep, there's definitely that kind of communication officer type jobs that are popular. This is just kind of going through what I just saw on our LinkedIn page. But yeah, definitely we've had people do go on to do quite high profile jobs and others just very nonprofit. But yeah, very
Yeah.
diverse though.
yeah,
Again, it becomes because GSWS is so interdisciplinary. You can be someone who I did have someone who ended up taking another course at the JI, but it was for Indigenous restorative justice. So that's how GSWS took a turn for them, kind of thing. So it can really vary.
yeah. And that's a great, and I think those are amazing examples, right? And again, allow me to turn the questions from, what are the careers that a GSWS can do? Because, allow me to, it's not just a cliche, I think anything is a possibility. It's like, but going back to the point that I make, there are part of who you are and, your lived experience that leads to all kinds of things. And I want to acknowledge that even though a lot of the examples that I brought up are working for not-for-profit or working in sort of like people related type of work, but can you work in tech, right? Like, like that person mentioned that they were doing a fitness app, right? Like, how does that turn into that, right? And I know that there's this amazing story that Casey has written that feature a GSWS alumni that works in the fashion industry, right? Like again, it's not so much about what a GSWS can do. It's about you who has a GSWS background. What are the things that you aspire to, right? So it's not a limit, but it's also is about doors that are open, right? So yeah, so I think those are great examples. Casey, do you have anything?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Roberta, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, I do say that to students sometimes. I'm like, oh, you come to GSWS as a major. It's not like I went to BCIT for accounting, and in 4 years, I became an accountant. Like, it's so wide open. It's really where you want to take it. So
Hmm.
if that's what you're looking for, tell me what to do, Roberta. But, you can really explore and see what's out there. And I was also going to say a lot of HR jobs too, especially with the equity, diversity, inclusion.
Yes.
There's definitely people going into those type of jobs too. And that could be for anywhere. That could be for ICBC. That could, it doesn't have to be for so quote unquote like social justice,
Hmm.
nonprofit kind of thing. So
Absolutely.
Yeah. We even had a alumni who started off as an entrepreneur, and she took those skills and she turned it into being an advocate for immigrant women who were dealing with violence. So you can really take your transferable skills, no matter where you came from, and turn it into something else that you want to contribute. There's been lots of people who were interested in activism,
Hmm.
and it's interesting how entrepreneurial skills can translate into that.
Yeah. And I just want to quickly respond to the comment that Roberta mentioned about, about the person who, sorry, not about the person, but about how folks can actually work in HR, right? So a number of slides ago, I talked about skills being a building block, right? So if your GSWS kind of give you a foundational, the question also becomes is what blocks do you want to add to that allows you to open to a specific doors, right? So if folks who wanted to do those sort of equity related roles in HR, maybe what to add on, is some sort of HR certificate, and course that allows you to, go into that role, right? But the other example that Roberta brought up about the person who did you say the indigenous,
Hmm.
is it a communication?
Restorative. There
Restorative.
was restorative justice program. So
Okay, yeah,
they're
a JI, right? Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
Justice Institute for just to be specific there. Yeah, so that's again, think more about not only your GSWS degree, or your BA in GSWS to be specific, but what you continue to build on that would allows you to open specific area, open doors to specific areas that you want to be in. So those are great example.
Yeah, and in her case, it was just like a few classes. It wasn't a massive
Yes.
commitment kind of
Yeah,
thing.
it's
Because I
not.
know not everybody's like, oh, now I got to do another degree. But sometimes it's a
Thank
matter
you.
of just taking a few courses to get the skills, say, to put on paper to go the way you want to go.
Yeah, and that's a great point, by the way. Yeah, even looking at the what can I do with a degree in resources, not each of them are, you have to do a master's degree, right? Again, it could be a certificate, it could be a couple of courses. So that's why all this research and looking at job postings or connecting with people in the industry or the sector will be able to help you understand, okay, I have my BA already. Do I need other certificates or do I need some other training to allow me to do this type of work, right? So that's part of the research that is, to learn more about career possibilities and what does it take.
And
So,
sometimes
yeah.
volunteering is a way to open that door too, kind of thing, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, no, great point. Great point. Shall we move on to the next question? This is an interesting one as well. I'm gonna, put you on the spot again, Roberta, because you know your alums. Do most of your graduates remain in Vancouver, or do they move elsewhere in Canada or the rest of the world?
It's interesting. That's a really interesting question. I saw that question and I kind of did a little searching because, like, off the top, I'm like, some people you already knew they were going to, right? So they're either international themselves, so they came here for schooling, and we're always like, I always want to go back home, or I won't. So there's some who do that. There's definitely others that have come from away and now live in Vancouver and plan to stay in Vancouver. And of course, there are people who've and I've seen moved at least across the country for jobs too. So again, it's a lot more of your individual circumstances. Are you, on your own? Are you, do you have a family to worry about, or are you able to pick up and move? What is your comfort level with moving to a new city to take that job, or so what's your sense of adventure, or, or you, Vancouver's too expensive. I'm gonna take my skills and go elsewhere. So it's really varied. There isn't definitely a single answer for that question.
Yeah. And for the person who asked this question, again, I think this tool might really satisfy your curiosity. So I just want to, show you the alumni finding tool again, because, I highlighted, based on filtering folks who were in GSWS, but there are also other filters like where do they live now or where they work, right? So part of that, conversation, I think they just included the biggest one. It's not like no GSWS grad is now work or is now living abroad, right? So, like I wonder if there's anyone who lives in, I don't know, I can think about South, actually Africa. I don't know. I'm just gonna see if they include that, or does it needs to be, oh, I have to spell it right first. But anyways, you get the idea.
Oh, well, I remember speaking to a grad who they always planned to go back to Singapore because they said it was
Yeah,
needed there, the skills that they had developed.
absolutely. Right. So Yeah, well, there are three of them. Yeah, that are, well, yeah. So, but yeah, just to kind of give folks an idea that, if you're curious about that, definitely check that out. So, yeah, this is another interesting one. And again, we still have time for a couple more. So if you wanted to, if you still have other questions, feel free to post it. But the next question is, let me switch it back to my slide. What's the most unique way that you've networked to find a job? I love that. Casey, Roberta.
I was actually jealous of the whole chat GPT thing, trying to like how that like, oh, look, here's an organization. Here's a but I don't have any interesting stories about networking that I can think of. But I think sometimes it is volunteering, sometimes it is just trying to get your face known.
Yeah.
Um, if you're a current student, going to your instructor's office hours to talk to them, just to say hello, hi, I'm enjoying your class, yada yada. Because when you need a reference letter for either grad school or somewhere else along the line, you got to make it easier on the instructors to know who you are, kind of thing. So that's just one thing, especially when it comes to grad school. I think taking the time to really get to know your instructors, and so they can kind of remember you is something to do.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I know that last semester, I know GSWS has co-hosted a session with the Burnaby Public Library. And I heard that there's a bit of a connections between, Burnaby Public Library. Again, I don't want to
Yep.
give out false information, but Casey, maybe you can tell us a little bit of that, like, I don't know if there are any sort of things that are related to networking, but I know that it was a really great session that folks had last semester.
Yeah, actually that came about kind of a nepo baby situation, I guess, because it's my sister works at the public library. She's a librarian, and we were just chatting about how great GSWS is, and she said, "Do you know these two or three people? They're GSWS grads," and I had actually met one of them as a grad. So, you never know who you're going to meet, or just talking to people that you can learn about these different opportunities. So I was just talking with her and I said, well, it seems like this is a great match that people might not think about. Would you come and talk to our grads? So she gave a presentation and gave some great tips about how to present yourself and apply for these jobs. So you never know what opportunities might be out there for you that you haven't really thought about.
Yeah, and I think from an education role, a lot of advocacy role, like, the library is more than just shelving books. I think there are a lot of, community outreach. So again, that's just an example
Yeah.
that is sort of not obvious, but if again, I wish we can, interview those GSWS student or alum who is currently working there right now, and I'm sure they will be able to explain to us why it's just so meaningful for them to work there. Yeah, and Roberta, are you going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to add, yeah, one of the attendees did actually recently get a job with the Burnaby Public Library, so it's like, okay, it
Nice.
definitely worked for one student. Um, I was also going to say we have a question on the online here about, do you have to have a degree? And I'm not sure what they mean
Mm.
for everything, or
Yeah, and again, feel free to if for privacy's sake, you can DM, Roberta or myself to further explain to that. Because is the person sending you a direct message, Roberta? Because I
Looks
don't
like
it's
it.
on the
see it.
Q&A. It's on the
Oh, it's in the
Q&A
Q&A. Okay. My bad.
on
My bad.
here.
Yeah. I know that is kind of because there's also the Q&A
Yep.
tool as well. So yes, I see that now. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Feel free to clarify that, for us either in a DM chat. Oh, I wonder if it was contextual in the sense that do you have to have a degree to work in Burnaby Public Library? Or I think that's
Oh
the
yeah,
context
maybe.
that we're missing. So, but
Yep.
it's like from 6 minutes ago. So yeah, so help us to understand that question in the chat or somewhere else. But going
Yeah.
back to networking, I just want to add one minor piece is that sometimes we tend to think that, oh, if I talk to somebody, that person will give me a job or have an opportunity.
Hmm.
A lot of times, what the reality is, it's kind of like what Casey mentioned, sort of like one conversation led to another, you know about this, right? And the silly metaphor that I use is sometimes, it's like those detective movies or TV series, so think of yourself as a detective, right? Sherlock Holmes or whatever. You arrive to a scene, something happened, and it's not like you talk to somebody and you found out exactly what happened. It's sort of like one clue led to another, right? So imagine this research process, is going to be, and again, it might have happened a lot in, when you're doing a paper as well, right? Like, you found this literature, you found this research that mentioned about this person that led you to look at that person's work, and you realize, wow, this is what I'm looking for, right? So sometimes it's not exactly linear, and networking is a research process in some ways, in terms of finding opportunities that are available, but also finding opportunities that match what you want and what you're looking for and what you love to do. So sometimes is multiple conversation is about the process more than just, one step or one person, sometimes it happens, but sometimes it takes several steps.
Hmm. And to answer the question, if the question about do you need a degree was about the library, um, in the presentation we learned you can actually start there as something like a building services worker or a clerk without a degree, just to get your foot in the door. Some of these larger organizations that you might be interested in evolving into um, another role there. And yeah, I would say I was kind of joking about the Nepo baby comment just because she was my sister, but don't be afraid to talk to anyone, whether it's a family member or a friend who might be able to see something in you that you might not see in yourself, or might have heard about someone who's doing a job that you might love to do.
Yeah. And that's a great point, Casey. Like, again, sometimes when we talk about networking or connecting with people, it sounded like this really kind of complicated. It feels so uncomfortable or even a little bit awkward. But I always imagine it as this, right? Think about the last time you want to pick up a new hobby, right? Be it like you want to start, baking sourdough bread, or you want to start playing the ukulele, and, or maybe I'll have to drop a Blue Jays reference. You want to start playing softball or baseball because you've been watching it on TV. Again, whatever it is, think about the last time you start a new hobby. You connect with people who are already doing that hobby. You want to learn, hey, how did you start? Like, like I'm so uncoordinated. Like, how can I hit a, ball when it's like coming at me as like, like not 100 miles per hour, not professional, but still a fast, thing coming at me, right? So again, chances are not only that you're able to get some useful information from them, chances are if they like what they do, right, or if they see value and sense of meaning in terms of what they do, they also get excited about answering your questions, just like somebody who has a hobby that they absolutely love. They would love to give you any information to get you started, because once upon a time they are also starting themselves. So again, if you're able to find people who are in the position to answer those questions or have those conversations, it's about asking good questions, and you can get a lot of information. It's not just, it's not about sort of like, okay, well, do I have to be a really good talker, or do I have to be an extrovert? Yeah, again, I can go on and talk about networking, but, but these are the things that you definitely consider, because opportunities, don't just happen online. They're always associated with people, right? So going with the people, talking to people, you just never know where those conversations are going to lead to. Yeah. So looking at the time here, I want to highlight a few resources before we wrap up our time, and we also have a quick poll for folks. But allow me to just quickly highlight that. Again, I've highlighted a few, but there are a few more that I couldn't quite squeeze in, but I feel like they're tremendously helpful. The first one is, let's start with the career development resource page on GSWS department page. So this is something that, Casey had put together, and I've included the link here. So there is some resource. But what I also appreciate is the student and alumni story. So that's how I've learned about a couple of alumni who are doing really, really cool things, in their career. So check out those stories as well. And there's also one that Roberta want to make sure that I will mention that. Actually, why don't I give you the space to highlight that, Roberta? I know this one is a really good one.
Oh yeah, definitely. So we do have our own LinkedIn group for all current and alumni. So just go to SF or just go to LinkedIn, SFU, GSWS, and ask to join, and then one of us will verify you and then add you. And then sometimes we do post positions there that we hear about for our students and alumni that you might not hear about otherwise. So and you get to then be start making connections with other people who are in the same boat as you or are down the road a little bit more ahead of you.
Fantastic. Yeah. And again, I've also included the link here. If you can just click on the link and it'll take you to exactly the page that look like this, and you can hit the join button. And then I'm sure Roberta and Casey will add you in no time. So I also mentioned a couple of things. A couple of weeks ago, I did a workshop under I'm graduating now what. So for folks who are getting closer to graduate, they want to learn a little bit more about level up their research. I included the link here on YouTube. So definitely check out that workshop. And there are also additional resources. Again, for a lot of folks who might be thinking about like how I want to polish up my interviewing skills, or how do I learn more about resumes. So I also included a link here to Career Volunteer Services website. One thing I want to highlight is that not only there are information sort of like really concise and summarized, but there are also Canvas course. These are self-enroll. There are no quizzes, no tests, no grading, but it's just a way for us to organize a lot of information about everything, on using the platform, using the Canvas platform. So by no means that you have to read through everything, but treat it like a reference manual that you can tap into if you want to learn more about a particular topic. And we mentioned LinkedIn quite a bit as well. So I wanted to share this resource with you because we have purchased an institution license on this masterclass or online masterclass called Land the Perfect Job with LinkedIn. So if you want to know more about how to use LinkedIn to connect with people and find jobs, definitely check this for free. It's a really, really good course, and it organizes itself into this mini 2-3 minutes video. So it's very digestible and something you might find helpful. Also, a whole bunch of other career resources I want to throw in. And again, lots of things I want to share with you, but they're all there. So before we wrap up, I know that we've talked a lot, but we also want to get a sense of how folks feel about what we've talked about today. So I wanted to include this really, really quick feedback poll. There are a couple of questions that are multiple choice, including how did you find out about this, to some questions to us at the end in terms of what has changed for you as a result of attending this event. So these are completely anonymous polls. So if you can take a couple of minutes to quickly answer that, we will really appreciate. So hopefully it shows up on your screen. So this is a poll within Zoom and not in Slido. So I know this in other platform, but hopefully it just pops up on your Zoom screens that you can answer right away. So yeah, so I want to give folks a couple of minutes to do that while I highlight a few more things. So yeah, the last couple of things is again, in a group setting, inevitably we won't be able to go into too much about your individual situation and context, but don't feel hesitate to reach out to me or any of my colleagues. I worked with students in Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences often, but all of me and all of my colleagues, we see students from all disciplines. So you can book an appointment on myexperience.sfu.ca. You can also attend our weekly drop-in sessions, and more information and time can be found there. Specifically, in the month of November, I will be at Art Central every Wednesday from 1 to 2 o'clock. You can just come by. You don't need to book an appointment, and we can chat a little bit about your situation and context in a more specific way. So I just want to double check. I know that I have launched the poll, but it doesn't. Oh yeah. Oh sorry. I can see. I think folks are just taking time to respond to it. So sorry. I just want to make sure that because I think Zoom doesn't sometimes doesn't tell me until it is actually submitted. So take a couple of minutes to finish that. And again, you can talk to us about anything career related, right? From using LinkedIn, or to your interviewing skills, all the way to what can I do with my degree, or I'm really interested in supporting this type of population. How can I get started in this research? So all of the above is something that we can support you with. And again, follow us on Instagram. We also, and yeah, I also mentioned about booking appointment on my experience. So the links are there. But I just want to say, before we say the big thank you, I just want to see if Roberta and Casey have any sort of final wrap up words. I know folks are still filling out the poll. So before we do our big thank you, any final thoughts and wrap up thoughts from the both of you? I know I kind of put you on the spot there.
No, no, I was gonna words of wisdom. I was just gonna thank everyone for taking the time to do this. It's really great to try to think ahead, planning your future. I know it can be scary, but it doesn't have to be. So take those little steps to figure out uh, and yeah, hopefully you will go down a good wormhole as you go through all these, using Chat GPT, go in LinkedIn, see what organizations are out there that you never even knew existed that are like, hey, that sounds interesting. So hopefully I wish you all the best in your searches.
Yeah, thank you for coming today. I really appreciate it, especially hearing about how you heard about the event. And that you took time out of your afternoon to do this. And I've put a couple links in the chat. If you go to our alumni page, if you're not already following us on social media or on the LinkedIn page, follow us. And you know what? You can even feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. That's kind of how we find out what our grads are up to after. So feel free.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's been really interesting to hear from Albert as well.
Very much
Thank
so.
you. Yeah. Yeah. So on that note, I just want to say a thank you again for all of you who are with us. And yeah, we'll stay in touch. We're here to support you. So definitely thank you again for filling out the poll. We really appreciate that. If you need a couple minutes, I will keep that poll open. And I will also stick around. So if you want to ask a question in a sort of relatively more private way, let us know. But other than that, all the best. Have a great rest of your semester and enjoy the little bit of sunshine in the for the rest of the day. Yeah, take care. Thank you again. So let me stop the recording.
Mhm.